The movie opens the scene with a blind guy walking in the city. The display TV on one of the buildings reports a culprit who has been dropping sulfuric acid from buildings on pedestrians. A woman buys some street food. A man watches the blind guy through his binoculars from an adjacent building. He is revealed to be Chief Police Officer Zito. He calls the woman buying street food Officer Ho and asks her to follow the blind guy. The blind guy follows a fat guy into a supermarket who is leaving some vile voice messages for his wife as he suspects her of cheating. He buys sulfuric acid. This confirms the blind guy's suspicion of the fat guy being the culprit. Officer Ho and the blind guy follow the fat guy to a high-rise building. The fat guy prepares to drop the sulfuric acid while Chief Zito calls for backup. The fat guy sees the police down the building and tries to escape, while the blind guy tries to call the police emergency number. The police and Officer Ho stop the fat guy. The fat guy tries to splash acid on them, but Officer Ho tackles him down and arrests him. We cut to the hospital, where the TV shows Zito getting interviewed on how he caught the culprit. The blind guy is revealed to be Detective Johnston, a famous detective and master of solving cases before he became blind. He is frustrated that Zito gets all the credit. Zito comes to the hospital, and we get to know that they are old friends, and that Zito had been following Johnston to solve the current case. Officer Ho is impressed by Johnston and tries to make conversation, to which Johnston shows no interest and leaves. The following night, Officer Ho visits Johnston and asks to go for dinner. Johnston and Ho have dinner. While Johnston inquires about Ho's skills as a policewoman, Officer Ho takes Johnston to her house. She tells him a story of her childhood, involving her childhood friend called Minnie. Minnie told Ho about her mom and grandmother, who have had a disappointment with their partners and how they killed them, and that she might become like that. After this, Ho never spoke or met with her. Eerily, after 5 days, Minnie disappeared and to date has not been found. She asks for Johnston's help in solving this case. The next morning, we see Johnston sleeping in Ho's lavish house. Johnston abruptly wakes up and tries to find the bathroom, and due to the unfamiliarity of the house, uses the bathroom that Ho is taking a bath in. Ho seems annoyed and also suspects him of not being blind. She insists on solving the case. Johnston asks for $1 million to solve. Their first lead is a voice recording of a case in Kowloon Morgue. The duo reach the morgue and enacts an unsolved case. The case was between two morgue keepers, Cow and Tack, where one of them brutally murdered the other one. Through the enactment, it is discovered that the killer stopped in the middle to strangle someone else to death. The third man was never found. The case contains many gaps and both struggle to find the meaning behind the actions. They leave the morgue and come to a street food cart. Johnston gives a sketch of a girl and asks Ho to find this girl in an adjacent building called Blue Tango. Suddenly, the girl walks out, and Johnston seems happy. Johnston goes to Zito and tells him he saw his future wife. The girl is Johnston's crush, and Zito even helped him find her before. But Johnston had lost her after losing his eyes. He appears excited as he wants to marry her. But Zito does not share his excitement and says she might have already married. In a fight between the two, Johnston senses mold and rust on the ceiling. Johnston moves in with Ho to work on the case and teach Ho. While trying to understand Minnie, they come to know that she had been standing outside of Ho's window and cutting herself. Ho asks how Johnston lost his eyes. He tells he was working on a case 4 years ago and waiting for a suspect to reveal, but started to see dark spots on the 7th day. After he caught the suspect, he went to the doctor who said he has retinal detachment and was too late to recover. The next day, the duo visit a high school volleyball practice to search for clues. Ho assumes it is for Minnie and asks to search everyone's shoes to match Minnie's shoe. She spots the coach's shoes to be the same. Ho chases after the coach, and it is revealed that the coach is a thief who has robbed 5 jewelry stores. Johnston calls for backup, but realizes Ho lost the culprit and manages to grab her shoe. However, Ho realizes it was not Minnie, but another culprit. The police barge in to find Ho and Johnston arguing. Johnston asks Zito to send a search dog to find the culprit using the shoe. Ho accuses Johnston of solving his cases and not Minnie's. Ho and Johnston argue. When Johnston hears Ho has bruised her feet badly, he quiets down. Back home, Ho says she feels responsible for Minnie's disappearance. Johnston and Ho visit Minnie's grandmother to understand the case. Minnie's grandmother stays in an apartment and has kept an elderly man hostage. She seems delusional and manic. The elderly man's family comes and takes him away. The grandmother follows them with Johnston and Ho. Johnston tries to ask about Minnie, but the grandmother does not answer. Johnston cares about solving other cases for reward money. Ho and Johnston leave for Macau to search for the morgue murderer. He realizes this and confronts Johnston to only solve his cases and not have any concern for Minnie. Johnston rebuffs, saying all are human and that no one's case is more important than the other. Ho apologizes and said she has already found the murderer. Johnston tells Ho to have an imaginative mind to solve cases. He asks her to put herself in the morgue murderer's shoes and imagine the case. Ho imagines herself as the third person with Cow and Tack. Cow and Tack used to bet money, and this time they pooled it to gain profits. The third person, Lee, who happens to be the murderer, got angry at the fact that Cow and Tack won and he didn't. Therefore, the third person, Lee, murdered them and fled with the money. Since then, Lee has lost all his money and has been killing and robbing people on the streets of Macau. Johnston asks Ho to agitate Lee by defeating him at gambling. When she does, they expect him to follow her, but he follows Johnston instead and tries to kill him. Johnston is rescued by Ho. Johnston and Ho happily dance as they have caught Lee. Lee tells he has been saving up for future advanced eye surgeries that may enable him to see. He asks Ho out the next day. The next day, Johnston asks to be taken to the Blue Tango to see his dream girl, who he fell in love before becoming blind. On reaching the building, he asks Ho to leave. The building is a tango studio. Johnston dances with his dream girl and tells her how he fell in love with her. But his dream girl seems to be already married. Just then, Zito calls him and walks into the studio, not seeing him there, and tells him all the reward money is gone. It is revealed that Zito is married to Johnston's dream girl. Johnston leaves angrily. Johnston recaps a case about a missing girl with similarities to Minnie, as both of them were heartbroken. Ho also speculates that a psychotic killer might be targeting heartbroken women. Johnston immediately calls Zito and asks him to find all missing female files in the last decade. Johnston and Ho try to reenact all the victims' breakups to find a clue. Through Johnston's and Ho's enactments, they narrow it down to cab drivers. Johnston calls Zito to find a list of cab drivers who quit between 2000 and 2001. As Johnston waits for Zito, Johnston's dream girl comes with the files. She explains that she has always been attracted to Zito. Johnston realizes maybe Minnie hurt herself for a boy. At this time, they realize there was a boy who lived upstairs of Ho's house, who was in the same school as Ho and Minnie. They find the boy, Joe, to be a chef in a restaurant. Joe had left for Brazil after the disappearance of Minnie and opened a restaurant after coming back with his partner. When Ho asks Joe about Minnie, he pretends not to remember. Johnston is confirmed he is the killer. Ho and Johnston begin following Joe. Joe is revealed to be having an affair with his partner's wife. Joe's wife, who is pregnant, also follows him and gets to know about this. However, despite being confronted about the affair, Joe refuses to get back with his wife. When questioned by Ho and Johnston, they discover Joe only used Minnie for fun and did not kill her. He simply left school and went to Brazil. Minnie was obsessed with him and wanted to show her love by cutting herself. Johnston thinks a cab driver killed Minnie after giving her a lift. They follow the suspects to 5 cab drivers. They follow up with a driver living in Yen Long. The driver answers the door wearing only a girl's tennis skirt and tennis shoes. Ho and Johnston ask about Minnie, to which he replies that he gave a ride to her, but ate her eyes. He takes them to show many skeletons in his house, but does not know which one is Minnie's. Ho asks Johnston to call for backup and tries to arrest him, but he escapes and fights with both of them. Johnston finally shoots the driver. He takes an injured Ho to reach the hospital. On the drive, Johnston confesses to loving Ho and knowing about her liking him. In the hospital, Zito informs that they only found female adult skeletons and not Minnie. Ho's surgery goes well. Johnston worries that Ho might be ugly now that he has confessed. Zito makes Johnston touch Ho's face and realizes that she is beautiful. Johnston realizes Minnie took a ship and not a cab. He gets on the ship and calls Ho, who wakes up. He tells her that Joe lied and he knows some clues to find the killer. He also tells her he loves her. Ho suddenly realizes Johnston might get poisoned by Joe. Johnston goes to Joe's restaurant to confront his wife, who is none other than Minnie. Minnie was broken when Joe broke up with her, but she remained stubborn and followed him to Brazil. Thinking that Joe may reject her again, she remained in Brazil and got adopted by locals and changed her face with plastic surgery, but was always near Joe. Even though Joe married her, unsuspecting, kept cheating on her. Therefore, she killed Joe and his mistress. Johnston tries to run away, but Minnie lures him with her water breaking. When Johnston goes to help her, she stabs him. They engage in a struggle when Ho arrives and rescues Johnston. Minnie starts bleeding due to pregnancy complications. However, on knowing she is Minnie, Ho helps her give birth. However, Minnie dies. The girl child is raised by Ho and Johnston as their own. In the end, when the family is eating at a restaurant, the child spots the coach, who was a jeweler thief. Ho prepares her shoes and sprints behind her to catch her. Johnston and the child fight over ice cream.